We're going.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call this curriculum committee meeting together for Thursday, April 25. Let it be known that Joan Ensign is sitting in for Katie Dostler. Mark Hetzel's here, and Ted Fry is absent at this time. Motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
I didn't see any public comments. So Mr. Jordan, we're gonna have an update on the bilingual programming.
Yes. I'm very excited to be here to give you a little update. What is closing in on our first full year of having an official bilingual program. So as you know, last year we were sitting here getting board approval to go forward, and we are making it. So I just have a little update. I don't want to steal the thunder of the department show that's coming on Monday, because they are going to do the whole EL and bilingual curriculum presentation.
Sure.
So my little update here is really just focused on where we've been and what our plan is for next year, just to keep you in the loop. Okay. So we got our first year almost under our belt at Heritage Elementary. We have launched at the K-3 level. And we have served about 50 students in our bilingual program.
Oh,
So
And that's through the whole,
K1 and 2 and 3. 50 students. So it's already grown a little bit, and we've learned a lot along the way. And we have provided an immense amount of support to our teachers. So we have contracted with CISA 2, and we have a consult who pulls our teachers monthly. And then we also have done quarterly trainings with our teaching teams. So the bilingual teacher and the kindergarten and first grade, second grade and third grade classroom teachers. So there's been a lot of collaboration around that support. And we will continue to provide that CISA consult next year, though we haven't determined the frequency that's going to be necessary. So next year, last year at this time, we had questions about, would we roll up a grade? Would we go 2 grades? What was kind of our plan? And what we decided is, what we have right now is our cohort system, and we really like that system and the way it teams. So we're gonna keep those cohorts and just roll up 1 grade. So next year, the bilingual program will be K4. So those same 3rd grade students will move to 4th grade, and we'll welcome in a whole new batch of kindergarten. And then the vision would be, we will roll up every year, 1 grade at a time until it's a full K-12 program. Does that make sense? Okay.
yes.
We already technically have our bilingual programming at the high school. So it's just a matter of a few years of roll up until it's K-12. And what falls under that is our biology course that is taught in Spanish. And then we so graciously approved our environmental sciences program for next year, which also helps us because we will then just alternate the years those courses are offered. So it becomes a sustainable plan and not just an additional course every year. So that's kind of the plan for next year. A new course at the high school and a roll up of the cohort. So it becomes K-4.
So how does the staffing work as you roll the kids up?
Yep.
Are there more staffing needs then? What is
Well, I will
paras
get
or
to
support
that,
staff?
but
Yeah.
I can answer right now for the K-4 level. We currently have a halftime teacher who's serving 4th grade more as like an ESL support, but she is bilingual certified, so we thought that ahead. The other half of her position is family engagement, so she's been working with all of our bilingual families on different engagement levels. So next year she will take that 4th grade cohort as her teaching load halftime and remain a halftime family engagement specialist. Right now that feels sustainable. As we continue to grow, I would anticipate that family engagement need to be full-time somewhere, but for the immediate future, that feels like an okay split for right now. At the high school, we did ask and had approved, I was gonna get to this, but I'll just say it now. Our additional positions, which are able to be funded through transfer of service, which means we get additional kids, so we have that staffing money available. So we have posted a bilingual counseling position because that is necessary to support the bilingual program, and an additional high school paraeducator, bilingual paraeducator. And what that does is it takes some of the pressure off of just simple like translation requests, not necessarily curricular or assessment practices or even instructional practices, but for some of those higher level students who just need the language translated, that frees up our teacher time to not be just translating materials, but working through the craft of education. Does that make sense? So,
Lisa, last year, there was an opportunity for kids, our Spanish-speaking kids from other schools to transfer.
Yep.
Did they mostly transfer, or how did that all,
Yep,
you know,
that's
roll out?
that's a really great question. I wish I had that data in front of me. The bulk of our students were already at Heritage.
Yeah.
We did not have any Spanish speaking students from Arboretum opt in, but we did have a couple from Prairie who chose to do so. We also had students from Prairie choose not to opt in.
Okay.
And so we still offer that like English as a second language support at Arboretum and Prairie. So the families who want to stay in their home schools can, and some did, and some opted in.
Okay.
The one thing that still remains a little bit tricky, is next year we have about 15, based on our sort of census and 4K, about 15 potential, kindergartners, and we can't screen them until August. So, we're not 100% certain. The screener is what dictates if students need EL services or not, the language screener. So we have invited them to our family night. And then we will offer the programming should they qualify for EL services.
Why can't we screen them before?
Because it's not, well, we asked DPI if we could just go to 4K sites in May, but it's not, according to them, it's not normed on them. So we want to make sure we have accurate results, and that was the guidance that they gave us. So kindergarten will always be a little tricky, but we have a sense of how many potential students. And one other thing that was a little fuzzy last year was how far can we open up our bilingual program? So if students are already bilingual, but don't necessarily need English language support services, could we invite them in? And we kind of opened that up at the beginning. And what we have found is, we have 50 kids. So tomorrow, all of our access scores come in, which are standardized language proficiency tests that we'll hear more about this on Monday. But that determines their level of proficiency, whether they need services or not. And we're really going to have to hone in on just the students who need services. Now, students are already in the program and they've met that exit criteria. At this point, we'll still allow the family to choose. But going forward, if there's a student who moves in second grade and has a level 5 proficiency, we wouldn't invite them into the program because we're able to sustain it at this time. Of course, this will be flexible. We're still learning. It's still very new, but we're really proud of the amount of participation we gained already in this first year.
So with the bilingual programming, do the students who are below level 5 still do the standardized tests in English with support or something, or And then I'm assuming they also have their Spanish testing as well, because you're working on both languages.
Mhm. Yep, that's accurate. They, I would say the and feel free to jump, the vast majority of students do take our standardized assessments. A small handful of newcomer students who literally move in from another country. If they move in real close to a testing window, we would exempt them for the first
Okay.
year. But the vast majority of them do take our standardized assessments, yep, and then that access score, that's an annual standardized test of their English language proficiency. So, and that's how we're measuring our success over time. We're promoting their Spanish literacy skills, but ultimately, we're still trying to increase their English language proficiency to the point where they're fully English proficient. And you'll learn a whole lot more about the holistic program on Monday.
Just one additional question. We moved to the bilingual program because of numbers at the Heritage and
Yep.
high school. How are the numbers playing out at the middle school and intermediate school? You said you're gonna roll up 1 year. Is that gonna work or?
Yep. Yep, that was part of our plan. One of the questions was, should we just add fourth grade next year because those students are already in that program? Or should we roll up to fourth and fifth because that fourth grade is kind of missed in the end? That cohort is very small. And so fifth grade already this year has started to kind of map their programming around what it'll look like when they move to a bilingual program. They're not teaching their science in Spanish right now, but they'll have that capacity once next year's fourth graders get up to fifth grade. And there's already a bilingual certified teacher in that fifth grade. So we have kind of planned far enough out. Now, when it gets to sixth and seventh, we will either need to shift some staffing or have our current staff add on to their licensure to get a bilingual certification. Many of them are willing to do so. And there are programs out there that allow for that in a very accessible way. Good questions.
So 2 questions, and one is about the counselor. The other is, first, how long does it take a typical student to get to the level 5 where they no longer need the language support? Is it just too varied individually, or?
It really is. I mean, our students have a real wide range of experiences. So
Right.
we have newcomer, particularly right now, we have had like 3 newcomers in the last week, all from Nicaragua. So they don't have any English proficiency at all. So when they step into a third grade classroom, they'll be surrounded in a real rich language environment and a lot of social communication. So that will come first. The social dialogue comes first. That usually happens pretty quickly with our younger ones, but full proficiency, it could take anywhere from like 3 to 5 years if you get to that depth of academic language. So if you think about our high school students, they may come in with interrupted, so they may have been in school last in 6th grade and then they joined us as a sophomore. They may not get to that level 5 within those next couple of years.
The reason I asked, 2 weeks ago, I was one of the staff members, board members that met with the Son of Dorisburg.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that they talked about there was how alone so many of the level 5 students feel, because they don't typically have the family support to assist them, whether it's with homeworks, with projects, with college planning. And so a question they had was, how far down might this counselor be utilized, or would they strictly be utilized with the Heritage program, or will they have access to the counselor too to assist them, and then they were also talking about all the way down to the intermediate school in terms of planning their future.
Yep.
They felt like they really were alone in that whole process, and so will this counselor be working with them too, or strictly with the heritage?
Yep. It's a great question. So it is posted as a K-12 position. And my initial thoughts in collaborating with Tim and Brian Grosky at the high school is that at least 50% of the time they would be at the high school, because that's where a lot of the post-secondary work happens. And so at least half the time there, and it would make sense for about half the time to be at Heritage. However, during course registration and other post-secondary planning, they may sprinkle their time in if there's, you know, family engagement opportunities for our Spanish-speaking families throughout, but primarily they would be working at Heritage and at the high school, since that's where the bilingual program is.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
It's amazing how far we've come in 1 year.
It's a big point of pride, and our staff has
Yeah.
been so incredible, and it's been a heavy lift, but to say here in Waunakee, we have a bilingual program, it's off the ground and running, it's great.
Well, thank you for your leadership and for your, all your staff and teachers who are really putting it out there.
Thank you, and we are appreciative of the approval of those additional positions. We hope we can get some great people in there and get them hired, have them contribute. So, all right, thank you, and
Thank you.
again, more to come one day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, next on the agenda, summer curriculum projects.
Okay, so, thank you, Mark. So since our last meeting, when this came in as a kind of first look piece, Amy and I circled back and we made sure, we double checked, our folks are pretty good about this, but sometimes there are exceptions. We made sure that these submissions kind of met our framework for allocations based on the type of work and number of participants. Where the numbers were under, it was because of how the team was looking at scheduling. And they were eligible for maybe a few more hours, but they felt like they couldn't schedule that time collectively over the summer. We also looked at a few areas that might have been more appropriately funded by other parts of the program here, or with the addition of some of the summer extended contract days for instructional coaches, library media specialists, was actually work that the extended days could pick up. So there are a few adjustments since then, but this is the reviewed and updated list. And I think it's a larger list than we might see, but we have a lot of initiatives moving forward. We also see more hours than you might typically see out of the middle school as they are getting ready to move into the 6-period day for next year. And just as a reminder, Amy, was it 2 years ago, we moved from $20 an hour to $30 an hour for this type of work, which, for the bottom line, resulted in an adjustment there. So we feel good about the work that our teachers are looking to take on here. Would recommend this for approval. Now, Mark, I know you and I have had some conversations about one particular entry. I know you may have some things you'd like that team to consider as they enter into their work. So, and I, certainly there may be other conversation points around this. But after we kind of talk through that and look at any adjustments you might want to make, overall, we feel really good about this and would like to see a recommendation to go to the next full board meeting. But I know you've got questions.
ELA at the middle school get decided, or is that, you got a holding number there, but.
Okay, so this is for the summer projects.
Oh, no,
Textbooks-
that's next. I'm
Textbooks will
sorry.
come back to,
Okay,
and that's
I'm
but
sorry.
we'll have to address that there, absolutely.
Okay, my filter's not working well. If you could go down to the social studies, Rebecca. Slow down. Yeah.
Right, so the top of the page is coming up here is the one we're talking about, Rebecca. Yes. Yes, Lauren and Colin.
Okay, so in preparing, I came across this item and my concern was that I shared with Tim. Is the curriculum writing project ahead of having board approval for the courses? Now, the reality is we're going to need to offer the course, a course in these subject areas. But in the past, we usually received a course proposal with an outline that gave us a sense of what the course was about. And I think, Joan, I don't know if you were on the committee at the time, but there's a social studies course that dealt with war, and it had some topical areas that the board recommended they might want to modify and reconsider with a different focus point before the course was approved. And my concern was that we allocate a significant amount of money for course development before it's even proposed, approved. In talking with Tim, there are some parameters we could put on the curriculum writing. I was particularly concerned with that issue, and then the second issue, the Black Americans course, with a focus on Black creators responding to their times to their media of art and music. And I guess my question to Tim was, I had a couple. One, have we shared this concept with some of our students, particularly perhaps our African-American students, or with the idea group, to see if this would be the lens that would make the most sense? It's an interesting lens. My concern is it a big enough lens, given this is one of our first courses looking at African-American history. And then also the possibility that this could end up being part of an AP program based upon how they work the projects and what have you.
Mhm.
So those are concerns I had. There are 2 additional courses that will be prepared that weren't listed here, at least I didn't see it, and that's with Hispanic history and Asian American history.
When you say it, was it a big enough lens? My question is, how was this lens arrived at to begin, like, how was it that this particular, these topics were chosen for?
Yeah, great question. So there are a few different pieces going on here. I mean, one is, we've had feedback, and it is part of the DEI plan that had come through the board 2 years ago. And then also you see elements of this in the plan, the disproportionality plan that Tiffany has been bringing forward, is an interest in creating some additional course options on the elective basis, for representation. And then also, and you probably saw this in the news recently, in Wisconsin statute, there are some state requirements that you cover certain topics, and Asian American studies was added to that. So when Lauren and Colin brought their concept to me a few months ago, they're trying to find a way, and this is true when you're trying to do any topic in a semester course, is how do you provide accurate coverage, but then give students the opportunity to go deeper into a topic and gain more understanding. So, my suggestion was, first, we do some prep on what these courses could look like in advance of course proposals. And because we had these new statutory requirements, we should go back and look at all of our groups that are mentioned in statute, and in the process of working on the elective courses, see if we can add some resources for the social studies courses all kids take to make sure it's up to date. And when to kind of balance that question of coverage versus kind of a deeper topic. It's not a new AP course, but it's a relatively new AP course called AP Seminar. And if you want more information, I can send you the link. AP Seminar isn't so much about a specific topic as it's about research skills and inquiry around a topic of the course's choice. So AP Seminar doesn't have to be a social studies course. It doesn't have to be an English course. It could be a thematic course, but it involves an independent project. It involves a group project, and then it involves the AP exam in May. All three elements get combined into that AP score on a score of 1 to 5. And so what we had talked about was when we get to the course proposal process, having some semester courses that you could, as a student, choose, maybe just take one, because I'm interested in this topic. But if you took both semesters in a year, and the idea is you might get 4 courses that would be on kind of like a 2-year cycle, kind of like Lisa was saying with the biology and the environmental science. If you took 2 in a year and you met the AP requirements, you could take it for AP Seminar credit. So this is a little bit more of a complicated project than some of ours, because we're talking about getting ready to offer some electives. We're looking at developing resources to make sure our universal courses are up to date, and seeing if we could maybe put an AP aspect in to kind of augment our AP offerings. And so given that these are areas that are in some of our plans, given the complexity of it, I felt it might be a good place for us to do something different than we normally do and fund the work a little earlier than we might. Because again, this is a case of teachers really looking at some of the things we're trying to work on and coming forward with their own ideas about how we can move this more quickly for kids.
Do you see then it would go through the channel next year?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is pre a course proposal. At the end of this process, they would still need to bring a course proposal in. You would look at it as a board.
Right.
I hope if they do their work well, we'd approve the course. But at a minimum, we are going to have resources identified that we can work into our other courses to make sure we're up to date with those state required areas. But when Mark and I talked, you know, I would like to take back to them, and knowing these 2 teachers, I'm sure they'll be really receptive to it. I mean, I think the thoughts about engaging with stakeholders is really valuable. We also talked about, are there curricular resources outside of the system that we would want to connect with? I'd already had some of those conversations with Lauren and Colin, but that was also.
And the other thing is, as a plan, might they want to consider more lenses, Black achievement to society, to the area of science or whatever. I mean, there are other lenses they could possibly choose, maybe 2, maybe just one other one. I know it's only a semester course, but like I said, you reference the Black Museum and multiple floors, music being one of them, but there's more to the Black experience of achievement than just art and music. And I'm wondering, would more lenses add substance to the course? So.
Yeah.
Other than that, that was my concern.
I wouldn't pull it from the list, bring you some. I, doing it in advance or doing it after, it might be a good idea to do it in advance. I don't have a concern.
But I would bring all of this feedback to them
Mhm.
and ask them to kind of work that in as they move forward with this. And again, I want to underscore, This is still gonna come through our regular process in terms of actually approving a course that might come from this work.
So the way I would see this is preliminary work, and once it's approved, there'll be more need for more curriculum writing time for the courses, probably. Correct?
There could be, I mean, we'll see how complete
Okay,
this is. I don't want to say one way
okay,
or the other.
okay.
So the two items after that is another new course, but that one has come through the regular channel.
Yeah, I mean, I think in hindsight, I mean, they put it in as a new course because that was kind of, they probably should have put that in as other because it's not a new course yet. But yes, this next one with the kids.
It's discovered.
Oh, that's just a new source they have
Oh,
for their tech.
it's not a new course.
They have a drop-down menu in the form we give them to fill
yeah,
out.
Okay.
And that is what helps us do the formula for the number of hours that they get, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of these major course revisions probably aren't real major course revisions. There's a lot of.
Oh, I would say they are. I think, you know, I think in hindsight, we probably need to incorporate a new reset. We'll take that back into the plumbing shop in the form next year, but, you know, a lot of
But if
these
you look at the
things.
details, for example, Melissa Hanson's, for the American Lit, I mean, it's significant work that she's going to be doing on it, and yeah, I mean, something like that really is a major endeavor, and it takes, I would say from the ones I looked at, they're getting approximately 30 or 40 hours, and they're gonna be putting in double that. Same thing with the, when you look at the 7th grade, and 8th grade. Math and English, social studies,
Fine.
to adapt from a 43-minute to a 59-minute. They've got 8 hours apiece to work on. Well, this is gonna be 10 times that.
And again, this is what we've talked about. I mean, we know this is a fact of life. I mean, first of all, it's really great that we resource some of this work.
Yeah.
But dedicated teachers, and our teachers are dedicated, will put in more hours beyond the paid hours. But realistically, they feel when they commit to a project, there has to be accountability. When can they actually schedule everybody on the team to do the work? And so that's why you will see the hours that you see. Any other questions on this?
If not, I'll call for a motion.
Oh,
Motion to move this to the board for recommendation.
second.
All in favor?
I, so Tim, what do they end up turning into you at the end of the project?
So they will, again, in keeping with some of the things that we've done recently, they put it in a Google folder. If it's a major revision, they update the syllabus, which is something that's new this year that we make available. We also will be asking them to, and you'll hear more about this next month when we do our AI update. We will not expect, but we will invite teams in grade levels that have access to AI to look at some of the AI tools we have to streamline some of the more routine work with the unit development. But yeah, they do submit artifacts into a Google folder at the end of the process.
So to that point, Tim, when they make the adjustments, when they publish their syllabi and their projects and what have you, is that on Schoology? Is that, or is that an it's not an EduClimber, is it?
So what will happen for middle school and high school is those syllabi go into Schoology,
School, okay,
which is the course management system for middle school and high
okay.
school. We have curriculum guides below middle school, and those are on our website.
Okay. And then can families access it as well as students, or is it strictly students that have access to that?
So families do have access to Schoology. You know, I think it's, you know, we provide information about how you can get
Okay.
set up on that. I'm not gonna put you on the spot, Ted, but as a parent, is it hard, easy to access Schoology? Do you have you have a right to pass too, of course.
I wouldn't give you to that. I don't access it.
If you want, we could, I think we're gonna have a lot for the May meeting, but at a future meeting, it might be interesting to you to kind of see.
Well,
what
again,
Schoology-
particularly, I mean, we always hear from a segment of families that are wanting to see.
Yeah.
You know, the curriculum and that sort of thing, and so it's pretty easy, K6. And so just wanting, you know, for that access piece, so maybe, you know, that might be down the road on our agenda.
Yeah, I think it would be really good to put it out there so you see what it looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, from my perspective, but again, I use it a lot. You know, I think our teachers do a good job of putting their course content in there, and I think adding the syllabi with some standard expectations has been a good piece. But as with many things, when you put the information out once or twice a year, sometimes that catches people at a busy time and not always when it's timely for them, if you know what
Sure.
I'm saying. So there's probably room for us to think about parent engagement.
Well, it was
there.
positively responded at the Principals Council a couple of weeks
Well,
ago.
kids certainly know how to
Yeah,
get to school,
and they
because
really-
that's where all their stuff is.
That's
Yeah.
one of the strengths we talked
Yeah.
about, access to that stuff,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Okay. Next item, textbook request.
Hey, and this is our updated textbook requests. Two things that are in here from a budgetary perspective that are still estimates. Are our 5-8 math pilot. We know what our two pilot resources are as a result of our study team. And Amy and I are working with the vendors to finalize this, but based on we've asked for information from both pilot vendors about what our financial contribution might be for a pilot. So we feel good about the estimate that's in there. The other thing is the middle school ELA team is meeting next week on the 1st to go through their decision-making process, and the pilot will bring that back in at your next meeting. The estimate that's in there for the middle school ELA materials, that represents the higher of the two proposals that we have from the two pilot vendors. And we'll just see where they come in. We've conducted some surveys from students. We've had the teachers go back through the evaluation criteria and identify kind of their most important evaluation criteria so we can weight those. And then we're going to be asking our teachers on each of those weighted criteria. We're not going to say, do you want this resource or that resource? We're going to say, here are the criteria. You've had conversations about how important are each of these criteria on the rubric. You know, we don't want to assume that everything is worth 15%. So they went through a weight assigning process, and then they're going to evaluate each of the two resources, my perspectives and Amplify ELA, on that, and we'll score it. And hopefully there'll be a clear-cut direction one way or the other. And then we'll bring that to you next month. Okay. Otherwise, I think these are situations where either we've had areas that were due for an update, like high school physics or middle school social studies, for example. In some cases, we have some new courses with some of our new high school music courses. And of course, you know, you see some elementary pieces that Amy's already updated you on before. So again, we feel good about this. It is a higher number, but if you've been looking at our budget reports, you know, we had some carryover from last year. You know that our accounts are currently, well, the secondary account where some of these big numbers are coming from is currently in the black. So between next year's budget and funds we've been kind of holding in anticipation of this being a big year, we'll be able to manage all of this.
What do these prices compare historically to curriculum, you know, has it gone up, inflation, like?
So it depends. Some we've seen greater costs. So, you know, I would say the ELA, I mean, that is, now we have big, by the time we get to middle school, you can say it's just 2 grades, but that's almost 700 students. But that's a higher cost. Now, when you look at everything that comes, and these are both very up-to-date programs, significant digital components, and while you might think digital saves you on paper, and it does on those annual costs, there's a lot of automated assessment. There is a lot of visual text that's built in. So what you see with digital is sometimes you could kind of stay where you were and keep costs in a lane, or you could take advantage of the new technology and add more resources for differentiation and student engagement, and then the costs move up. But an example of something where I could go back 10 years ago and the numbers would be in the same ballpark. First item on the list, Sandy's marketing textbook. That's pretty much in a range you typically see. The one at the bottom, the high school physics that Tammy and Drew selected, that's pretty standard to where it might have been 10 years ago. So to answer your question, Ted, it's kind of a mixed bag. Some of these have moved up, and you tend to see that more with the big core adoptions. But if it's more of a course specific textbook, the inflation has been much less.
So for your new courses, whether it's K4 ELA, if it's 7-8 ELA math, where you're using the digital component, that's a subscription. Does the initial cost, is that like a 3-year subscription, a 5-year subscription, how, or just a single? How is that built into the cost? I know you're frugal about that, so.
Well, so I mean, the high end cost, I'd have to go back and look, that's a 6 or 7 year from the highest cost vendor.
Okay.
Now, of course, if we get there to the end, you know, could we do it 3 years and then come back in 3 years and bump out the last? I mean, we could. I don't think we'll need to, but we
Right.
could if we had to, because there's no question, we have here a K4 math adoption. We have additional K4 ELA materials with Act 20. We have the middle school ELA adoption. And we have the pilot, which is not a big number, but it's a number for something that's a pilot.
Right.
And I want to say one more thing about the core numbers being larger. If you're a publisher and you're doing something in one of the core content areas, that's ELA, math, even science, and it's for multiple grades, particularly in the lower grades, what we've seen over the years, and it's a good thing for students, is again, more and more functionality gets introduced. So any of these digital resources today will have automatically very robust, maybe even completely identical, depending on the content area, Spanish language resources built in. They will have built-in assessment activities. They'll have built-in formative assessments if the teachers choose to use them instead of creating their own. They will have some tiered pieces for students that need special learning supports, where pre-digital publishers didn't aspire to do that. But if you were to kind of reel back the conversation 20 years when digital materials were coming in, there was a school of thought that you could have significant economies with digital. And that's still available, but those are typically resources that just moved to digital and really didn't try to add functionality beyond a paper resource from 20 years ago. Now, that having been said, we do have teachers in some content areas that do a lot of their own, so I'll just single out world language on here. They have some items that are subscriptions and some resources they use to augment, but our world language, they're not using a true textbook. They have their own design curriculum and they use some of these resources to help implement it. Whereas you've got other pieces, whether it's marketing, physics, Brian with the sociology text, you actually are doing a textbook.
Well, that's what kind of my question, so my experience now with my kids, especially the last one now, it's weird, right? We grew up with textbooks and we always refer back to, hey, and I have a hard time with that now. I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
But I think it's a new tool, the whole digital side, which is great. You can get all this information and yet to navigate or to find the best approach to learning it. I don't know if it's hard to say because, okay, talking physics to me, it's like, okay, where are you in the textbook? Where are you? It's usually a handout of some sort. It's a copy out of some, but where did you get it? There never seems to be something you universally can go back to. Maybe there is, and maybe my student child doesn't really know exactly that process, but where were you taught it and where can you go back to refer to it? And I seem to struggle with that. Is like that a class specific thing? Is it just in general what's happening now? And it's a bigger question.
Yeah, it's a bigger question. I'd say it's class specific. Even if it's locally generated materials, they all should be in Schoology.
Yeah.
And they should be, at least middle school and high school, be able to track back. Now, you'll always see from us, at least up to middle school.
Schoology, that's where I say I don't use it much. That is really the only time I did dive into it when, okay.
My
Show
child
me
has
where
a
you get-
question, show
Yeah.
me what you have.
Yeah. And so was the process easy? Well, it wasn't so intuitive for me, but if I did it more, I guess it's not too big a deal, but anyway, so.
Well, no, I mean, and so I think for us, for ELA and math, at least up to the middle level, you're going to see large scale adoptions. High school is going to look a little different. But it is interesting. I mean, I was just doing a presentation today with some colleagues from other districts, and while we were getting ready for the room to fill, I was having kind of a, talking shop conversation with my Java likes from Waunakee and New Berlin. And we were just talking about what curriculum adoptions or resource adoptions we had in process. And we were talking about ELA and our two finalists, our New Berlin's two finalists. They're about to make a decision and so are we. But we circled over to middle school science. And all three of us were acknowledging that unlike mathematics and ELA, there is no super compelling, all-encompassing resource for middle school science. And we were, all of us, either working with a resource we didn't really like, I'm not going to say which district that was, or we were kind of using a resource for a chunk of the course and then locally generated for another chunk of the course. I mean, I do think that may change over time in science, but it's just interesting to see where publishers, I mean, because again, publishing is a business. Publishers have teams that develop the content, and then they have teams that take that developed content and kind of bring it to life, whether it's printed material or electronic. I don't know what Amy's take on this. My pet theory is there's been so much focus in the last decade on ELA and math that's where publishers have kind of centered their investments, and it's left social studies and science, even though they're important topics, kind of on the outside looking
Where
in.
the money is.
No, it quite frankly is not. There's no Act 20 for science in Wisconsin. for example.
Act 21. Okay, any questions on the textbook? Motion to approve is needed.
Second or?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and that brings us to next meeting.
So next meeting is going to be very exciting. We are going to hear from what the ELA direction is for the 7-8 materials. I mean, I will say this, I think, what I'm hearing is the English teachers see a lot of positives in both materials. They know we'll be further ahead than we've been, but I am as curious as anybody to kind of see how our decision-making process unfolds on the first. We also will be bringing into you a pretty big update on AI and education, kind of what its broader implications are, and what we've been up to locally. And it's a major topic. I think you'll have a lot of, hopefully you learn some things as we've been learning, and I'm sure you'll have questions. And then in June, we'll be bringing in our assessment plan for 24-25, or at least our first version of the plan, because as you heard from Amy, well, I'm not gonna, what might still be kind of TBD,
To be determined, right?
Right, I mean, let's see.
the screener, the state screener. We're still waiting on the state for the meeting screener. But
Okay, and I would like, that's a lot for May, but maybe a 15-minute block in case one of the committee members has anything they would like for discussion. I'll get back to you on that.
sure,
Ted and Katie can get back to me.
okay. And Schoology's come up maybe twice. Would you want to see a little bit on Schoology in June, or would you rather save that for the start of the new year?
Well, that is actually, that'll be the second meeting for the new committee.
Yeah.
We could put that on there, so there's some substance.
Assessment plan will be plenty of substance. No, I'm just,
In
I'm
addition
kidding. I'm
to-
jesting. I'm jesting.
In addition to.
Yeah, so, but no, I mean, I did bring it up. So, I mean, I do think, we've had Schoology for several years. It's good to have for lots of reasons, but I would agree. I mean, I think the kids have a good familiarity with it. But teachers should be talking with their kids routinely about, here's what we're doing, here's what you can find in Schoology, all of those pieces. Those aren't conversations teachers typically have directly with parents. So I think it'll be just good to kind of get an orientation to what it is and what it can do. Yeah, so great.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Joan, thank you. You've had a busy week subbing for this board member and that